Hello, my name is Bronte Reidinger, and I'm an undergraduate student at the University of the Sciences. I've been working with Dr. Ashley Marchena on a study titled What the Autistic Community is Saying About Nonverbal Communication. Before beginning, I just want to note that throughout this presentation, I will be using identity-first language at the recommendation of many self-advocates. Weaknesses in nonverbal communication are a distinctive feature of autism spectrum disorder. Nonverbal communication includes things such as eye contact, facial expressions, body language, and gestures. Whether or not somebody uses nonverbal communication can have important ramifications. Take a job interview, for instance. Whether or not a candidate uses eye contact can alter the meaning of what they're saying and whether or not they get a job. As I noted, weaknesses in nonverbal communication are quite common in autistic individuals. Unfortunately, there are very few treatments targeting nonverbal communication. Most research into nonverbal communication has been done with autistic children, but recent research has noted that weaknesses in nonverbal communication often continue into adulthood. So this led us to our present study. We had two key aims. We first were interested in determining if nonverbal communication was an experienced area of concern for the autistic community. And secondarily, we wanted to describe the experiences shared on and documented on publicly accessible discussion forums by autistic individuals related to nonverbal communication. So we began our study by doing a search of Google, looking for websites with discussion forums that targeted autistic individuals. We found 4. From there, we did internal searches of these websites to see if there were threads that referenced nonverbal communication. We found that the website titled Wrong Planet had by far the most number of threads referencing nonverbal communication, so we decided to utilize that website for our study. We then went to Wrong Planet again and conducted a search looking for different keywords related to nonverbal communication. We then extracted the first 200 threads from those results, and then we evaluated 50 of these threads for our inclusionary and exclusionary criteria. We found that 42 threads met our criteria, and from there, in phase 1 of our study to pilot our methods, we evaluated 10 threads. We took the 10 threads and we coded them for various things. We were looking for 3 primary things when coding. The first, any instances in which different types of nonverbal communication were referenced. Second, any instances in which a direction of nonverbal communication was mentioned, so be that expressive or receptive. And thirdly, we were looking for any statements in which somebody referenced an impact that their personal experience with nonverbal communication had on them. In the 10 threads we evaluated, we applied code to 379 different sections of text. We applied code 166 times for text referencing a specific type of nonverbal communication, and you can see that breakdown on the graph below. For example, there were 80 references to eye contact, but only 5 references to facial expressions. We applied code 70 times to text referencing a direction of nonverbal communication, and you can see that breakdown on the graph below. You'll see that individuals referenced expressive nonverbal communication far more than they did receptive. We also were interested in looking at the number of times 2 codes were applied to the same section of text. This allowed us to look for possible relationships between the direction of nonverbal communication and the type of nonverbal communication. We then found 143 statements detailing impacts of personal experiences with nonverbal communication. We then took these codes and evaluated them for different themes and sub-themes. We found 3 key themes and many sub-themes. You will note that in the right column of the table on your screen, there are different illustrative quotes. I highly recommend that you pause the video and read all of these because these are the words directly from the autistic community. I'll reference a few key ones in the rest of my presentation, but again, I strongly encourage you to take the time to read all of them. So the first theme we found were instances in which deficits were referenced, and there were 3 sub-themes for that. The first being an instance in which someone clearly stated that they were facing a challenge or deficit related to nonverbal communication. For instance, one individual said, "The only person in the world I can make eye contact with is my 6-year-old son." We also found instances in which somebody voiced that they had confusion or a lack of understanding for something related to nonverbal communication. And then there were also instances in which somebody was seeking guidance or support for something related to nonverbal communication. For instance, one individual said, "I understand flirting only on a very basic level, that it is meant to indicate that you are interested in somebody. But I don't understand the delivery. How do people flirt? What do they do and say? I feel dumb for asking, but I honestly just don't get it." The second theme we found were instances in which somebody mentioned that they had some sort of negative emotions related to nonverbal communication. And then there were many sub-themes for this. So in some instances, individuals noted that nonverbal communication was scary or anxiety-producing. In other posts, individuals referenced that they felt strange, awkward, or uncomfortable when using nonverbal communication. In other posts even, some people mentioned that it felt unnatural or that they felt obligated to use it. There were also instances in which individuals noted that they felt nonverbal communication was annoying. For example, one person said, "It's kind of annoying though, because when I am in that state of mind, I'm not thinking about body language, tone of voice, facial expressions. I'm thinking about what I'm interested in." And then there were 2 sub-themes in which individuals were referencing negative emotions related to their experiences with neurotypicals and nonverbal communication. So in some instances, people felt frustrated or anger directed at neurotypicals based on their experiences with them in nonverbal communication. And then there were other times where autistic individuals mentioned that they felt misunderstood or ignored by others, or that others saw them as weird or had the wrong impression of them. One individual said, "Unfortunately for me, they hardly made eye contact with me. And when one tried to get a word in, one had to attempt like 4 times before it was even heard." And then our last major theme were excerpts of text in which somebody referenced situation or person-specific experiences. And we had 2 sub-themes for that. The first was romantic situations. For instance, one individual said, "I've never been in any kind of romantic relationship, partly because of being shy, of course, but also I usually have trouble reading other people's signals and body language." And the second sub-theme was instances in which the experience was specific to strangers or public situations. So we have many key takeaways from this study. The first being that nonverbal communication deficits negatively impact the autistic community and are expressed areas of concern for them. We also noted that eye contact was the form of nonverbal communication referenced by far the most in these threads. We also found that references to expressive nonverbal communication occurred far more frequently than references to receptive. But we noted that the direction of nonverbal communication was closely linked to the type of nonverbal communication. All of these findings are important things for clinicians and researchers to consider moving forward. Also, based off of the different themes we discovered, we feel confident saying that there is a need for evidence-based interventions for nonverbal communication deficits in adults. Moving forward, we would like to utilize these methods on a larger sample of threads in order to see if we find additional themes and sub-themes. We would also love to conduct a study in which we interview autistic adults on their experiences with nonverbal communication. Below you'll find the contact information for Dr. Marchena and I. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions at all. Thank you so very much for listening, and I hope that you all have a great rest of your day.